Welcome to another edition of the Daily Night. I'm your host, Brian Smith, and I'm here to talk a little bit about all of the different recruiting things that are going on with UCF, because right now there's as much compiled as there will be in any one calendar year, probably just about ever. So let me give you a little synopsis of what I'm going to go over and why I'm doing it. First off, transfer portal. Notre Dame, Florida State, Boston College, Miami, Northwestern, UCF, everybody's involved in the transfer portal. UCF has been hot and heavy, and they have done a tremendous job. That's part one. I'll touch on that in a second. Part two, there is a chance to always sign somebody else on the 2nd of February, high school signees, a JUCO player, etc. And Gus could just announce some other signees from the transfer portal. Don't know exactly how that's going to go yet, but that's a possibility. Third, and this is what I'm already into, is 7-on-7 and all the underclassmen taking visits. There's the Hometown Hero event later this month at UCF. That's a big deal. UCF's going to have players from all over the state coming in for unofficial visits, and it's a big deal. You have to build relationships. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Now, I've got a little bit of an order to this, but some of it is going to cross. So keep that in mind. But the most important thing is still the portal. There's a couple of kids that I think are going to end up at UCF, but until Gus does his boom on Twitter and all that, really doesn't matter. Most important thing to note for UCF fans is still the following. They are filling not just good players at key positions of need. UCF needs to bring in, I would say, at least one more, if not two more linebackers, and there's between now and August, there's plenty of time. They need to help themselves along the front lines of the defensive line. You could always bring in another offensive lineman. You can never really have enough, but I think they're okay there. But front seven and O-line's where I always look, because it's more about physicality, strength. You want older players. UCF's got some pretty good players coming back, and they got Montalvo coming back, which are fortunate. Sam Jackson's coming back. They got Matt Lee up front. He's got one more year. They're going to be okay in that regard. Now it's about difference makers. If they take a guy, you can't just take depth players with the portal. And I think with what I've heard about some guys, they should be good to go there. Being stated, there's always somebody else that can pop up. I'm going to say this every time I have a podcast that involves the transfer portal. It is 365 days a year. There is no signing day for it specifically, or two, like high school has two, the middle of December and then the first Wednesday in February every year. That's how it works. This is different. So tomorrow, somebody could transfer out of, I don't know, Cal Berkeley, for all that matters, and decide he wants to play in the Southeast. UCF could reach out, and that could be a player, and he could play safety or receiver or whatever it is. The transfer portal is never ending. That's point one. Two, and this is the one that I really don't know. You can bring in other kids. I mean, there's a couple of guys locally they might go after, etc. But for the most part, the high school stuff is done. From what I was told, unless somebody really special was to come along, they would be done with the kids in high school. And this is what I was told in September. They kind of knew who they were going to get, even if they hadn't been committed yet, etc. They were just going to concentrate primarily on the portal and fill needs. Fair enough. And they've done it. Do not rule out a chance of that happening still. And there's the additional part. The second signing day also involves junior college or community college players, whatever you want to call it. They could add somebody from that realm as well. I have no idea what's going on in that world. Even if somebody from UCF called me right now and said, we're going to get so-and-so, I'd be like, who's that? I just don't follow it. So that being an option, you could fill a need. Like linebacker, again, they don't have much depth. They need something there. Do they take a linebacker that plays the hybrid position that they call the night? They could. Those would be spots I would look at. It's going to be more position specific if they go that route. But overall, the signing day could come and pass without anybody else being added. It wouldn't shock me. Anybody. Gus might get up there and just talk about the transfer portal guys that he's added already since signing day, plus anybody else he might get. Again, there's going to be more booms between now and February. The difference is, I don't know how it's going to work. This is the first round for me going through this. I'm as new to it as the fans. So it is what it is. The third thing I want to talk about before going off into a few little specific points about it, class of 2023. The hometown hero event, I believe it's the 29th. It's coming up, not this weekend, but the next. They have guys, they're going to be, Jacksonville to Miami, just the state of Florida, I think is the focus. They're going to come in for visits. It is pivotal that they do well with these because you build relationships not only with the player, but the parents, the guardian, the high school coach. Maybe they bring a buddy along. Maybe there's the kid's sister comes with everybody. Everybody. To use an example, I know that Clemson as a staff used to try to do their best. And this is incredible that they can do this. Remember, like if a player had two younger siblings, know all their names. Little things. Because it makes mom happy. It makes dad happy. It makes everybody comfortable. The number one word in recruiting is comfort. It's an awkward thing because you could be the perfect fit for a kid, but if he's just uncomfortable with one thing, you go halfway across the country, pick another school. Comfort. However, UCF can do the best they can on that weekend, and maybe they've got some events and different stuff. They did that last summer and had a great time with it. Competitions, team building kind of stuff. But with recruits, they're probably going to do something like that if I was to guess. I haven't inquired. I don't know. But recruiting the class of 23, the kids that are currently juniors, is going to be really ramped up over the next 2 to 4 weeks. This is a contact period right now, though, meaning coaches go on the road or kids can come in for visits. So that makes it very complex. The 15th to the 29th, you could have guys on the road, and they are. UCF assistants on the road checking out transcripts, film, talking to coaches. Hey, do we have a shot at this kid? So again, everything is colliding at one time. I can only imagine working in the recruiting office right now at UCF or any other Division I school. It's a nightmare because you can only be in one physical spot at a time. So with that, a couple of things about in the state of Florida that I want to talk about. There are 5 schools that kind of matter, and then there's a couple others in South Florida that I don't think really do. So Florida State, Florida, UCF, USF, Miami. Those 5 can go to bowls or be ranked or whatever until otherwise proven the other 2, and I ain't going to worry about them. All 5 are doing well with the transfer portal. Jeff Scott over at USF got his butt kicked with high school recruiting, but it didn't matter. I'll give him credit. I didn't know what their plan was. I kept looking at their commitment list in the fall. They killed it in the transfer portal. You can make an argument they had the best group in the country. They're certainly in the top 10 somewhere. It's very subjective, but they're going to be a vastly improved team. Florida State, in fact, I'm going to pull up FSU. They have an intriguing list per se. They've done a really good job. And the reason I bring these 2 up in particular, because UCF's somewhere in between on like numbers and what they're trying to do, but they're all trying to balance their rosters. Florida State's commit list is good because not only did they get players that are going to help them from local, they got a few that weren't necessarily around, and then they came back home. It was really well done. Span, a kid that played quarterback over at Lakewood in St. Pete, really good player. Really good player. Goes to Illinois, doesn't work out. He's transferring to play at Florida State and be a receiver. That kid has tremendous upside. Kids like that, he's a high ceiling, low floor guy, but can't teach the athleticism, can't teach the length. He's 6'2", 6'3" at least. He's listed at 6'4". Man, he can run, man. Saw him play a couple of times. Really, really like him. They also got Johnny Wilson, one of the most unique guys in the country for size, 6'6", 225. Again, not necessarily a normal fit, but they needed a bigger receiver. He's more like a tight end, kind of a flex guy. He played at Arizona State, and he's from California. We'll see if it works out for them in North Florida, but they're doing that. And then they got Micah Pittman from Oregon. He can go. These teams have improved themselves, so that's very important. If your competition's doing that, you need to do it as well, and UCF has. By the way, Caden Lyles and some other guys, O-line is something that Florida State desperately needed. They were not very good the last few years they have. But to look at UCF, this is what's really intriguing. They don't have as many numbers as the Noles, and certainly not as many as USF. But they got quality players, and I'm going to be honest with you, UCF looking at the roster and how they played this year, obviously I go in depth watching them a lot because I cover the team. But even though I don't cover Florida State, I cover it enough to know that they were just all over the place with their roster. And O-line in particular was a sieve. Their depth chart was not good. It's starting to build. They got a couple of kids in the high school ranks coming in. They're going to play very early redshirt freshmen at the latest, I think. And then I got a couple of kids in the transfer portal. You're going to see them go up. So the kids that UCF brings in this year with the portal, it's very important because if Florida State goes out and let's say they go 9-3 this next year, just kind of use an easy number, they win 75% of their games. That's a tradition-rich program. You need to match that, whether you're Florida State or USF, either one, to stay up there. Miami and Florida, they're in year one with their head coaches. They're going to be all over the map this year. You can have George Hallis coach them. First year, there's going to be bumbles. UCF went through them. Florida State went through them. USF. It's going to happen. It's probably going to cost you a game, if not more. And Jim Tressel went to Ohio State. Really good coach. They went 7-5, I think, their first year. Second year, they won the national title. There's a big gap there. UCF needs to make sure that the transfers they bring in this year, and I wrote an article about this today on Inside the Knights, offensively, they've hit the home run. Home run. Keymore Gamble coming in from Florida, which that's the next one I'm going to talk about. That's my little teaser. That was the final piece. Like tight end was really thin. Now you can rotate him and Holler and run more two tight end sets, like one running back, two tight ends. They call it 12 personnel. That changes what Gus does. And that helps you compete with Florida State because I think they're going to take a pretty good jump. I was a little leery how things were going last year, but the amount of talent they're bringing in, if they don't win at least 8 games next year, then I'm going to have serious reservations about Florida State because they're going to out-talent most of the teams in the ACC, which is at best, mediocre league. It's just not that good. It's a lot of 6-6 teams, and Florida State's going to be better than most of them. With that, you're also going to be competing for those high school kids. If you want to take 5 to 10 kids a year in transfer portal, that's fine. But the elite teams, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State, LSU, those teams only take a handful of transfers. Why? Because they go through and recruit kids for 2 or 3 years that are elite players, bring them to their campuses, and they build it. They already know them. Like Micah Pittman's a great addition to Florida State. That's an exception, not a rule. They got lucky to get that kind of kid. It's hard to do, and there's probably an issue if a kid's transferring. You're going to have fewer problem childs as a general rule at most programs. The state of Florida is a little easier because a lot of kids just come home. But for most programs, that's not a great way to go. UCF needs to use that as the finalizer and take like 5 to 7 kids at some point and get more, slowly build higher and higher numbers out of high school. It starts right now. That hometown hero event on the 29th of this month, you're going to be competing with Florida State and Florida and Miami. The in-state wars are going to be nuts. You could make a strong argument that the 2 best recruiters now in the state of Florida are in Miami and Gainesville, just based on like a personal relationship, talking to guys kind of thing. Again, I'll get to the Florida stuff in a minute. I have real reservations there. Jeff Scott at USF is a tremendous recruiter, but he's trying to recruit to a school that has no on-campus facility for a stadium. That's just the ultimate albatross and 3 strikes you're out deal for a lot of kids. It's not exciting. I live a couple miles from the stadium where the Bucks play, where they play too. It's not their stadium, man. And they know it. The colors don't match. There's no environment, blah, blah. It's terrible. That's one of the reasons they've had to go to the portal. It is what it is. But if Florida State just murders, USF and UCF this year, they can start to separate that gap again because UCF has made a great run here. USF, I'm not as sure. We'll see. But the portal makes it look that way. We'll see if they can coach them up and fit them in. I'll make my judgment next fall. But UCF made a huge jump from 20 to 21 in terms of talent. And then, of course, everybody got hurt. Didn't get to see the fruits of the labor. But they've got even more this year. Like, they didn't have a Keymore Gamble coming in. He had 31 catches, and was a key player for the Gators at tight end, and he can make plays down the field. He's not just a 5-yard hook guy and get a first down. He can make plays. The Hudson kid they're bringing in from Auburn can make plays. So as they're battling for these 23 kids I'm talking about, the transfer portal is going to help them. Hey, this is what we can do with you. But instead of getting you for like 2 years, like we're going to get Hudson, we can get you for 4. If you're really good, only 3. It's a selling point. They have to use the portal to help them, ironically, get more high school kids. And then you could have them for longer, develop your own program, and do what Gus really wants. And that's, you know how he always says, build this thing? That's Gus's line when he's talking to us at a press conference. Build this thing. That's what he can do. It starts right now. So last point I will make, and I've heard a lot of rumblings about this, and I've mentioned it sometimes. I've had a couple more just randomly come across to me. One from a recruit himself. Billy Napier is not doing a very good job across the board with recruiting. When he does like a kid, he's really good. He's burned a bridge or two. Let me just say that. And it's definitive. Do not come back. Build the bridge back cannot happen kind of scenarios. And these are unsolicited, to me kind of deals. And I have some reservations about him. People have a lot of different things, and maybe he'll prove me wrong. But if he continues on the path he is right now with recruiting, he is going to piss off a lot of people. In the state of Florida has a lot of really thin-skinned coaches and parents and players. And guess what? They all talk. I don't care if you've got the Florida logo, which is the most powerful logo in this state. There's no question about it. Most powerful. If the person representing the program is not likable, it's going to cost you players. It's that simple. And I can't go into names or any of that. He's not doing himself any favors with some kids. So he needs to be a lot nicer about how he goes about saying yes and no and what he asks, when he asks, across the board. But there's a couple kids in particular he did not handle very well. And cutting bait with people or not talking to them or not talking to the coach in a timely manner, etc., does not work. Again, I'm not going to be able to talk about the names of the people. That's just the way it works. But this shocked the hell out of me because I'd heard nothing but he was a great recruiter. This flies in the face of that. So UCF might be able to take advantage of that with multiple kids because, again, I hang around the 7-on-7 circuit. They all talk. The kids might hate each other because they compete so much, but they still know each other and they read each other's Twitter profiles and they message each other. If you tick off somebody, it's going to get around. So I'm going to leave it at that. Everybody have a great day. This is going to conclude it. Make sure you like and subscribe. And I also have the FGA report. Check it out. It's got all the 7-on-7 stuff. A lot of kids at UCF's going after. They're going to be in that. Interviews with them, podcasts with them, film reviews. They're all going to be on FGA report. Very specific about that. If you don't watch that, you're going to miss a lot of UCF stuff. It's all intertwined because it's Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, FGA. So everybody be good. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.